magic carpet ride continues. This ball club has been amazing all season long.
What's going on, everybody, and welcome to the show. Episode 33, the Larry Bird edition. Even though that, not off the top of my head can I think about a former or current Mariner that is wearing number 33, but obviously Larry Legend sticks out, so it's Larry Legend Day. Anyway, I gotta say, man, today has been a crazy-ass day. It is hot as balls here in Flint, Michigan. I gotta be honest with you, man. This Michigan heat is vastly different from back in the Pacific Northwest. At least in the Seattle area, you got the Puget Sound. That kind of keeps everything nice and cool. But out here, it's in the Great Lakes region. Holy shit, man. If you don't have AC, you are fucked. But how about those Seattle Mariners? A 10-game lead in the division. And this week, it included a monster 3-game set at T-Mobile Park. And the Mariners swept the Texas Rangers right out of Seattle. And I want to start right there, man. Tremendous effort. Tremendous effort all the way around from the Mariner offense that was, that literally seemingly put up crooked numbers all week long to get to 5-1. There were one loss coming, I think, at the tail end of the Chicago series. But hats off to them. As much as I want to praise the offense, and by the way, 5-1 this week, which is obviously one game better than they were last week. They scored 27 runs this week, 27 runs. 4.5 runs per game this week. Nice and consistent. It came close to what we saw last week, and only giving up 16 runs all week, which is about 2.5 runs per game. So you're going to take that all week. You're going to take that week from week. But as much as I want to praise the offense, this has to go to the starting pitching. I don't know if any of you guys were paying attention, but the starting pitching was fucking awesome this week. Hats off. Because, as we saw over the course of the last 3-4 weeks, starting pitching was a little bit sketchy, especially on that road trip through Baltimore, New York, and Washington. They had their problems. And it's nice to see that. It's nice to see that short-term mentality, the ability to put that behind you, because this week, every starter, Bryce Miller made 2 appearances this week. He had a phenomenal start against the White Sox, going 7, giving up no runs, 8 Ks, 2 walks. And then yesterday in Cleveland against the Indians, 5 2/3, gave up 2 runs on 6. It seemed a little shaky, a little bit, not so much. But Emerson Hancock, who got called up to push Castillo, Kirby, and Gilbert to the Rangers series, he goes 7, giving up 2 runs, 6 hits. He did give up a couple solo shots, but good Lord, man, did he pitch well in that start against the White Sox. And then Castillo goes 6. Kirby goes 6 against the Rangers. And then Logan Gilbert, 8 innings, pitches an absolute gem, throwing darts all day, gave up only 2 hits, 9 Ks. And what can you say? What can you say about the starting rotation? The bullpen even looked good too, outside of Eduardo Pizarro in the second game against the Rangers. Phenomenal, man. Phenomenal. You're going to take this week after week after week. Of course, the pitching is the strength of this team. And they were able to show that this week. And then tonight, I believe Brian Wu goes tonight against the Guardians. I don't know why. I still can't call them Guardians. They're the fucking Indians. He goes tonight against Tyler Beebe. That's going to be a phenomenal. Matchup. And of course, Wu, who was scratched his last start, returns tonight. He had the MRI. MRI showed up negative. So he's back in the rotation. But that being said, quick news and notes before we get into tonight's main topic. For those that were paying attention on social media, the Mariners finally DFA'd Zebby Zavala. And of course, we knew that was going to happen. Over the course of the last month, rumors started flying out of the Mariner clubhouse that pitchers did not like throwing to Zebby Zavala. And it's no coincidence that Mitch Garver started getting some appearances behind the plate in a backup role. I personally don't like this at all because there was a point of importance that Mitch Garver was coming in to be a DH only, and that they were not going to use him in that situation. And it only exacerbated things worse when they got rid of Blake Hunt. And so now the Mariners are in that position now where he is the backup catcher. One of the things that you wanted to avoid was, potential injury to a dude like Garver. And now that he started kind of picking things up a little bit at the plate, the last thing you want to do is be put in a situation where a nagging injury pops up. The Mariners really have not had a lot of luck with injuries this season. The last thing you want to do is have a dude like Garver be injured for, ticky-tack stuff. But the other guy that made his reappearance in the lineup is first baseman Ty France, who came off the DL when Zebby was DFA'd, and now all of a sudden you have two first basemen on the roster. And that's kind of where I want to start off tonight. One of the big things was that I actually liked what I saw from Tyler Locklear. I didn't think that he really had that bad of a week. 4 for 18, 2 home runs, 2 runs batted in, scored twice, 1 walk, 9 strikeouts, and a stolen base. That's not bad for your first week in the bigs. A couple long balls. I mean, granted, 9 strikeouts isn't exactly ideal, but that being said, contrast to a guy like Luke Raley, who was 4 for 19, 2 home runs, 3 RBIs, 4 runs scored, 1 walk, 4 Ks. Or how about Julio Rodriguez? And this is the funniest part because on Mariner social media, whether it be Mariner Facebook or Mariner Twitter, I kept seeing that Julio was back, and he's starting to heat up. And what's funny is he goes 4 for 23, 2 home runs, 4 RBIs, 3 runs scored, 3 walks, 6 Ks. And when you and if you've been charting his week to week progress, it's generally consistent. This is usually the range of what Julio does week in and week out so far in the 2024 series. I wouldn't say Julio is back at all. What I would say is that Julio is still being Julio. And it's nice to see the extra base hits because that's not something that we have seen a lot. And maybe this is the progression in the right direction. Because of course, again, and I've said it now for 2 weeks straight, that Julio, this is the month that usually Julio has that swing month where he all of a sudden turns it on in July and August, and he works his way back into the MVP talk. But what I don't like is the fact that you have two first basemen on the roster. And I said this on social media. If you go back to the Twitter page at Swinging Pod, I said this is a great opportunity for a dude like Locklear. If he can come up and show that he could hit major league pitching, it's going to make Ty France expendable. And Ty France has value on the open market. Believe it or not, he absolutely does have value on the open market. And my biggest problem is now that Ty France is back at the big league level, what are you going to do with Locklear? Are you going to put him in that same role that Luke Raley had for the first month of the season, where he's only getting 1 or 2 at-bats a week? Because that's going to be counterproductive for a dude like Locklear. Are you going to play him as a DH versus left-handed pitching? So he might get a start, maybe possibly 2 in the week. Are you going to give him pitch hitting, duty? What is your defined role for a dude like Tyler Locklear? Because if it's the case where he's only going to get to the plate once a week, you might as well send him back down to Tacoma. You might as well bring up another outfielder or somebody that you're going to get use out of instead of keeping him on your bench. Because the one thing you can't do with a young player like Locklear is let him sit. All it's going to do is fuck that kid up. So you're going to have a set defined role for a guy like Tyler Locklear, who I'll just say it right now. I would rather see Tyler Locklear than Ty France. At this stage, I know that before Ty went out, he was starting to hit a little bit better, and who knows, maybe that will manifest it. Last night, 0 for 2, 3 walks, 1 K, 1 run last night. So, I mean, it's nice seeing the 3 walks, but, Ty France is in a position where it's a premium power position. Now, granted, we're not going to see 2021, 2022 Ty France ever again. That's gone. Put that away. But if you're going to be playing every day, this is going to be a situation where he has to at least carry his weight. And so far in the 2024 season, it's been up and down with Ty France. We're over a week's worth of at-bats for Ty Locklear. I don't know, man. That's something to build off of. And, the 2 home runs, this week, something to build off of. And it's something that if you're Scott Service, you're in a really interesting place because there's only two places you can play him. Defensively, he's not the greatest first baseman. It's either that or he's a DH because he can't play third. And you're not gonna want to plug him in at third anyways, especially if defense actually is important to you. But quickly, I want to thank everybody for tuning in. If you're tuning in via YouTube, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. And if you're watching via X, just go ahead and continue watching. If you want to be a part of the Today Show, you can just drop a question in the comment section, and you can be a part of the show. All right, so very good week by the Seattle Mariners, 5-1, and that's something that you should definitely be proud of. But I want to get into this conversation because I kind of pitched it a little bit today on X. The 2024 Seattle Mariners are looking like they're going to win the American League West. They have a 10-game lead, and unless something drastically happens, knock on wood, this team is going to win the division for the first time in 23 years since the historic 2001 team that won 116 games. The interesting thing about the 2001 team, it was 2 off seasons removed when the Mariners lost Ken Griffey Jr., and it was 1 off season removed when they lost Alex Rodriguez to free agency. They brought in Ichiro Suzuki, they brought in Brett Boone, and the Seattle Mariners went on to basically win 2 of 3 all season long. And so it got me thinking. Can any one of our current starters on the 2024 team crack the 2001 roster? Kind of an interesting thought. I was thinking about it, and I'm like, well, maybe. Definitely the 2024 team has talent. I think we've all been saying it now for 3 years that this team has talent. So how are we going to fuck this pig? How are we going to start? So I was thinking about starting with the pitching this week and then next week, because we have a new co-host starting next week. And by the way, before we get into it, good news. We're losing a co-host as Chris Swanson, my buddy Swanee, is dealing with a lot of personal issues. That is seeing him dealing with things that I wish upon nobody. Get well soon, Swanee. Hope everything works out. But the good news is starting next week, the captain, Brian Abker, will be joining me every single week between now and the end of the regular season and the postseason. And if Swanee does happen to make it back, then obviously the show will have 3. But I'm really super excited for next year. For next week, as Brian Abker will join us regularly. All right, so we're going to start pitching wise, and we're going to start with the rotation. Now, if you remember, the 2001 Seattle Mariners starting rotation was Freddie Garcia, Aaron Seeley, Jamie Moyer, Paul Abbott, John Halama, and their sixth man of the rotation was Joel Pinheiro. Pinheiro ended up making 8 starts. Pinheiro made 11 starts that year, and he went 6-2. So the question is, as we go with this, now of course we're only for the 2001 side. I think we should preface this by saying we're just going off of 2001 numbers for the 2001 team, and of course we're also going to go with for the 2024 team just their total Mariner career, because a lot of these guys have a very small sample size as it pertains to this conversation. So Freddie Garcia, as we start at the top, Freddie Garcia versus Luis Castillo. Interesting. Ace versus ace. And of course, Luis Castillo has been here for almost 2 years now. And in his time with the Mariners, Castillo has thrown 351 and 2/3 innings pitched. He is 24 and 18. Last year, he went 14 and 9 to a 3.81 FIP. He was an All-Star, and he finished 5th in the Cy Young. In 2001, Freddie Garcia went 18 and 6 to a 3.48 WHIP. 4.48 FIP. In 238 and 2/3 innings pitched, Freddie Garcia had a 3.05 ERA that season, 4 complete games, 3 shutouts, gave up only 81 runs on 199 hits, 16 home runs, walked 69, and struck out 163. Conversely, last year, Castillo went 14 and 9, as I said, a 3.34 ERA and 197 innings pitched, gave up 73 earned runs on 160 hits, did give up 28 long balls, but only walked 56, and struck out 219. If you're asking me to pick between the two, who would I take? As much as I love the Chief Freddie Garcia, La Padera, Luis Castillo will beat that out. I think Castillo has much better stuff than Freddie Garcia, although Freddie, especially in 2001, was absolutely nails. And he did go on to win a World Series with the Chicago White Sox in 2005. But if you're asking me, if you held a gun to my head and made me choose, I would probably think Castillo gets the nod over Freddie Garcia in that situation. Moving on to number 2, Aaron Seeley, who went 15 and 5 that year with a 3.6 ERA, 33 games started, 2 complete games, 1 shutout, pitched 215 innings, gave up 86 earned on 216, 25 long balls, 51 walks, 114 strikeouts, compared to Seattle's number 2, George Kirby. I love George Kirby. I really do. This year he's 6 and 5, had a kind of an up and down, but last year 13 and 10, and in his 3 years in Seattle, overall he's 27 and 20, 3.41 ERA, 71 games started, 1 complete game. He's pitched 470 total innings, given up 154 earned on 392. He's only walked 50. He's only walked 50. Last year, 31 games started, 109 and 2/3, and he only walked 19 compared to 172 strikeouts. The difference is he was an all-star last year. The difference between the two is that, and this for me is a very simple question because both can handle the regular season. Aaron Seeley, especially when he's with the Texas Rangers, was a phenomenal regular season starter. When he came to Seattle, again, a phenomenal regular season start. He's the type of guy who could go 6, and you know for a fact that he's going to keep the game, and he's going to keep the team in the game. 100%. Same thing with George Kirby. So the question the question for me is, who are you going to trust in the postseason? Aaron Seeley was not a postseason starter. I'm sorry to say it. If any of you guys remember, Aaron Seeley in the postseason, he was not good. George Kirby has 2 appearances in the postseason. He appeared in the wild card game. I believe it was game 2 in Toronto, a 10-9 Seattle win. He only went 1 inning, but he was fine. And then he got the start game 3 against the Astros. The game that basically went 17 innings. He went 7, no earned, 6 hits, 5 strikeouts. He was electric in that game. The question is who do you trust? Both give you the exact same thing. Both had great stuff, very good in the regular season, but who do you trust when it comes to postseason play? And the answer is George Kirby. So yes, George Kirby cracks the 2001 rotation. The third in this is Jamie Moyer. Good old crafty Jamie Moyer versus Logan Gilbert. Now, I'm sure you guys know by now that I am a huge Logan Gilbert guy. 100%. Love Logan. I actually think Logan actually is the unofficial ace of the staff. But Jamie Moyer was a very good, when it comes to the history of the Seattle Mariners, he's going to go down as one of the greatest starting pitchers this team has ever had. And in 2001, he was a 20-game winner. Went 20-6, 3.43 ERA in 209 innings pitched, gave up 80 on 187, 24 long balls, 44 walks to 119 strikeouts. Had a little bit of a high whip, FIP that year, but overall, he had a monster. In 33 starts, he had a monster season. Logan Gilbert, who I absolutely love, in his 4 seasons in Seattle so far, not bad, man. He's 36-22, 3.62 ERA, 103 games started. He's pitched 594 total innings. He's given up 239 runs on 521 hits, 76 long balls. He's walked 133 compared to 584 strikeouts. A career 3.62 FIP. He's phenomenal, man. He does have a tendency to give up the long ball a little bit. Last year, 29 long balls. Year before, 49 walks. Last year, 36. So far this year, 20. But this dude is a strikeout machine. ERA plus last year of 108, 116 the year before. To me, the issue is consistency. You're looking for consistency year in and year out, postseason. And Jamie Moyer. If you look up the word consistency in the dictionary, you're going to see a picture of Jamie Moyer smiling way past you, right past you. And here's the thing: as much as I love Logan Gilbert in this case, you kind of have to go with Jamie Moyer. I don't think there's any question. Continuing on, Paul Abbott. I don't know if you guys remember Paul Abbott. Paul Abbott comes up next. If you guys forget this, Paul Abbott went 17-4 in 2001. Started 27 games, pitched 163 to a 4.25 ERA, gave up 77 earned on 145, 21 long balls, 87 walks to 118 strikeouts. Had a pretty high FIP too. Going up against our number 4 starting pitcher, which is Bryce Miller. Bryce Miller obviously came up last year, made 25 starts last year, 131 in 1/3 innings pitched. And of course, that was the most he's ever pitched in a single fiscal calendar year. Pitched pretty well. All things considered, a 4.32 ERA. Gave up 63 earned on 124. Gave up 18 long balls, 119 Ks. Had a 3.98 FIP. A 93 ERA plus. This year, he's been good. 88 1/3. He's 6-5. 3.46 ERA. in 15 starts. He's given up 34 earned on 63 hits, 12 long balls, 26 walks, 82 Ks so far this year, ERA plus of 108. And again, Paul Abbott to me was a short timer. You know, he was what Pat Gillick was looking for as a serviceable back end of the rotation guy. And granted, he performed well in 2001. Granted, he performed 2001, but you're looking for a win every 5 days. And the biggest problem that I had with a dude like Paul Abbott is he left the ball up a lot, and he also got crushed from time to time a lot. And yes, you can also make the same. You cannot also make the same argument. You can also make the same argument for Bryce Miller. But let me just say this: that who would you rather have? Who gives you the best opportunity to win every fifth day from that fourth spot? Are you going to trust a dude like Paul Abbott, who was pretty much out of the league a couple years later, or a young gun who's only getting better than a guy like Bryce Miller? I would think I'm going to be taking Bryce Miller. I think he gives you the better upside. And quite honestly, I think, really when it comes down to this spot in the rotation, it's the guy who for a fact is going to give you at least 5 1/3, who is going to be able to get you, who is also going to be able to keep you in a game where your offense, even if you're down by a run or two. You gotta take Bryce Miller. And of course, the 5th spot in the rotation, piloted that year by John Halama and Joel Pinheiro. Now, if this was a straight 1-for-1, and if we're talking like, Brian Wu versus Joel Pinheiro, but, Halama was the one that made the 17 starts that year, pitching 31 games, went 10-7. Actually, I think that was his best year as a pro. Pitching 110 in the 3rd innings pitched. Gave up 58 earned on 132, 18 long balls, 50 strikeouts to 26 versus Brian Wu. I like Brian Wu. Yes, I understand there's an injury. There's an injury concern. But again, it's the same argument, right? Because if you remember, John Halama was back in AAA Tacoma by mid-2002, and that's when that spot rotation ended up going to Joel Pinheiro. And Joel was a fine Mariner. I don't have anything bad to say about Joel Pinheiro, but this is 1-for-1. And when you look at the makeup of Brian Wu, even with the injury concerns, even with that, okay. The Mariners, we saw it this week that the Mariners, even if you're holding him out for precaution, you have a guy like Emerson Hancock who can step in and have no problems filling that void. But Brian Wu has probably the best fastball in this rotation. I mean, that's about as close to 80 grade as you're going to get. It's got movement. But, what I like about Brian Wu is his secondary pitches also are phenomenal. Maybe not, maybe his change and slider isn't as good as Castillo's, or his slider's not as good as a guy like George Kirby. But that being said, Brian Wu has the ability to go out every 5th day and give you 7 innings. That is, of course, if Scott Service is going to let him pitch 7. But in this case, again, it's the upside. And if you're talking about a playoff series, if you're talking about a situation, especially in a 5-game set where you're going to want to keep these pitchers on the roster, and if you want to keep a guy in the bullpen in case things get out of hand, yes, you want Brian Wu in that bullpen. The dude is so valuable, whereas a guy like John Halama probably wasn't. So in this case, you got to go Brian Wu. Now, here's the interesting thing. As we get into the comment section real quick, before we move to the bullpen, this coming from Rooftop Sports, who says, and John Olerud, Game 4 hero, 2001 ALCS, pitched a no-hitter until Lou yanked him. Correct. All right. Moving to the bullpen. Now, this is the craziest thing because the 2001 bullpen was phenomenal. Fucking nominal. Unbelievable. Kazuhiro Sasaki was the closer that year. He appeared in 69 games that year. 66 and 2/3 inning. 24 earned on 48 hits. Gave up 6 long balls, 62 strikeouts to 11 walks. And he had 45 saves that year. Yes, he's going to stay. Kaz Sasaki is going to stay. And it to me, it kind of hurts a little bit because I do indeed like Andres Munoz. But you're also in a position where you want stability in a closer. You want a guy who goes out there and is going to be efficient, who's not going to be afraid to attack hitters, afraid to attack a strike zone. And this really to me has nothing. It's nothing against him. Last year, Munoz 2.94 ERA. You like to see that. 49 innings pitched last year. 16 runs, 40 hits, only gave up 2 long balls, 67 Ks of 22 walks. To me, that to me is a little bit of the problem. Munoz's ability to throw a little far too many pitches, putting himself in positions that are not ideal. We saw that a couple times earlier this season, and he's prone to those type of outings. Now, I'm not saying that he's not good. I'm just saying when you're going up against a guy in Kaz Sasaki who did this on multiple occasions, had these type of seasons for multiple occasions. And of course, he was the guy who was put into that role when you had other guys like Arthur Rhodes, who was phenomenal. Arthur Rhodes was unbelievably phenomenal. And easily could have been a closer. And it's nothing against Munoz. I like Munoz, but Kaz Sasaki is going to be that. Speaking of Arthur Rhodes, he comes up next. And Arthur Rhodes, in 2001, 68 innings pitched, a 1.72 ERA, appeared in 71 games, 13 earned runs on 46 hits that year, 12 walks, 83 strikeouts. Had an ERA plus of 241. That dude was nails. In his age 31 season, that dude was absolute nails. Whereas, we kind of understand what's going on. Trent Thornton, serviceable, but you're not taking Trent Thornton. You're not taking Thornton over Rhodes. The other guy is also Jeff Nelson, who was making his second go around with the Seattle Mariners in 2001. Appeared in 69 with a 2.76 ERA. He pitched 65 and a third, giving up 20 earned on 30 hits, 44 walks to 88 strikeouts. Now this is the conversation. Like, this is the real conversation, because if you as good as Jeff Nelson was, and of course the very next year he gets traded to the New York Yankees to solidify their bullpen. We ended up with what's his ass, Armando Benitez, that crazy weird trade. Now, if you want to make the conversation, this is probably where you would probably slide a guy like Andres Munoz is. That's fair, because really when it came to the 2001 bullpen, I mean, they really had setup guys that, went slid into the middle relief roles. They were so deep. This would probably be the case. That if you're looking for ways and means to squeeze Munoz, this would be it. But if you're just going off one for one, this would be Jeff Nelson versus Austin Voth. Now, I like Austin Voth. Quiet as he's been this year, he's appeared in 29 games this year with a 3.03 ERA. He's 2-0, 29 and 2/3 innings. He's given up 10 earned on 19 hits, 5 walks, 25 strikeouts, and he has kind of been tagged with the long ball with 5 this year. An ERA plus of 124. It's not bad, man. It's not bad. He's probably been the most dependable arm in this bullpen so far this year. Especially when you consider Matt Brash is out, Santos is out, and they've had to bridge the gap from 6 to 9. And Voth has come in and actually pitched a lot of quality innings. The question is, would you take Jeff Nelson or would you take Austin Voth? This is kind of a push to me, because I think both have the upside that you're looking for in your second setup guy. Now, the question you really have to answer is, do you trust Austin Voth with high leverage innings? Is he that guy? Can you give him the ball in the 7th? Can you give him the ball in the 8th? Yeah, I think you might. Or are you going to take the dependability of Jeff Nelson? If you remember in 1995, Jeff Nelson was nails in 95. He was nails again in 2001. I would probably have to take Nelly. Number 4. Norm Charlton. The Sheriff Norm Charlton came back at age 38 in 2001. Gave the Mariners 47 and 2/3 inning pitch, the lowest of any bullpen regular. He was literally just the lefty guy. But he was good. 3.02 ERA, 16 earned runs on 36 hits, 11 walks, 48 strikeouts, and gave up 4 long balls versus Gabe Spire. I know Spire right now is on the 15-day, but Gabe Spire is phenomenal. If you're looking for that lefty out of the bullpen, Gabe Spire last year, 54 and 2/3, 23 earned on 47 hits, 11 walks, 64 Ks last year, had an ERA plus of 107, 3.79 ERA, 69 appearances last year. This year it's been a little rough, but 16, he only pitched in 16 and a third. He had a little bit of a walk issue this year, but that just still doesn't change the fact that Gabe Spire has been probably, like, if all things were equal, you can trust Gabe Spire with high leverage innings. I think we are at that point where we can definitively say yes. I think Gabe Spire would crack this bullpen, this 2001 bullpen, 100%. I think Spire gives you the velocity. I think his secondary pitches at that point outweighed everything Norm Charlton. Now, if this was 1995 Norm Charlton versus Gabe Spire, I might go in a different direction. But Gabe Spire, one-on-one versus Charlton gives you a lot more. Gives you a lot more in that situation. Considering Sasaki, Rhodes, Nelson, this is where I would probably have one of our current bullpen starters cracking that team. All right, Jose Paniagua. Yep, Jose Paniwaste was in that bullpen, and he actually was next to Ryan. Actually, he was the worst member of the 2001 bullpen. Okay. He went 4-3 that year, made 60 appearances, 66 innings pitched. He gave up 32 earned on 59 hits. He threw 38 walks to 46 strikeouts, gave up 7 long balls, which is, for regular bullpen work was the highest that year. 4.36 ERA, and you're looking at Ryan Stanek. Now, I like Ryan Stanek. I think I'm the only dude that appreciates Ryan Stanek. This year, he's 4-1, 3.95 ERA. He's appeared in 32 games, 27 1/3 innings pitched, 12 earned on 26 hits. He's given up 2 long balls, walked 10, but he has got 29 strikeouts. ERA plus a little low at 96, but he's got a 3.30 FIP, and it looks like he's got a 3.95 ERA. 100% you're taking Stanek in this situation over Paniagua. Paniagua made the team out of spring training, and if my memory serves me correct, Paniagua got off to a decent start, but overall fell out of favor with Lou as the season progressed, which is why you started seeing Lou pretty much go with his normal bullpen rotation. There was also the fact that he trusted Ryan Franklin more than he trusted Paniagua. And in the situation where you're looking at trying to put together the best bullpen 1v1, Paniagua was not a Mariner for long after the 2001 season. As a matter of fact, I think this was the one season which he had the workload, but for the most part was pedestrian. When you consider he was in his prime as well too, and when you're looking at Ryan Stanek, for a dude being 32, being brought in at the tail end of spring training, I would probably assume that Stanek has also been a dude that you can throw high leverage innings at, and it's not going to phase him. So yes, I would definitely take Stanek over Paniagua. And last but not least, in this bullpen, it's going to be Ryan Franklin versus Taylor Saucedo. And this is kind of an interesting one because Ryan Franklin made the club out of spring training as the long guy. And and of course, as he started the season, he was getting that workload where you saw him maybe once a week, maybe once every week and a half. But every single time he came in, he actually pitched incredibly well. There were rough spots in the 2001 season, but he finished it 5-1 with a 3.56 ERA in 38 games. 78 in the third inning. He did give up 31 earned on 76, gave up 13 long balls, which was the most by any bullpen regular. 24 walks, 60 Ks, an ERA plus of 1.16. He actually had a pretty phenomenal 2001. Taylor Saucedo this year has appeared in 23. Understood. He got hurt a little bit. A 3 ERA across the board. He's 2-0 in 18 innings pitched. He's given up only 6 earned runs on 16 hits. 1 long ball. 8 walks to 18 Ks. An ERA plus of 1.27 and a FIP of 3.38. And then when you look at what Saucedo did last season, I'm going to give some love to Sauce, man. I thought he pitched well last year. He made 52 appearances last year, 47 2/3, only gave up 19 runs on 41 hits, only 2 long balls, 23 walks, 43 strikeouts, ERA plus of 113 across the board. Across the board, Taylor Saucedo over Ryan Franklin, who I like too. That's a crazy thing. Franklin kind of had that cool little herky-jerky motion to the plate, but I liked him. But that's interesting, considering that, the 2001 Seattle Mariners were phenomenal. Back in those days, you actually have to, when you were looking at stats back in the day, because this was pre advanced matrix, it was pre-Saber. That wouldn't come into that wouldn't be in the baseball lexicon until 2002, the very next year when the Oakland A's made it famous. And so a lot of you're going off of traditional stats. You're going off wins and losses and ERAs, which obviously didn't tell the entire picture. And so when you're looking at it and you see Freddie Garcia, who had a phenomenal win-loss record, same thing with Aaron Seeley, same thing with Paul Abbott. You might even make a case for a guy like John Halama. But there's no doubt when it comes to rotation-wise, you can't overlook the fact that trustworthiness, consistency, the only guy who had it in the 2001 rotation was Jamie Moyer. Start in, start out, you knew exactly what you were going to get with Jamie Moyer. There's a reason why he pitched for 25 years or however long it was. He was phenomenal. But Castillo, Kirby, Bryce Miller, and Brian Wu cracked that rotation. I think if you were to redo it, it would probably look a lot like this. The interesting question is what would Freddie Garcia, Aaron Seeley, Paul Abbott, and John Halama look like on the 2024 Seattle Mariners? That's a very good question. I don't think that they would have a 10-game lead in this division. A part of me thinks with today's advancement when it comes to advanced metrics and the way that players are developed, I would probably think that a lot of these guys get absolutely crushed. Paul Abbott and John Halama, a lot. I would probably think that Paul Abbott and John Halama get sent down to AAA Tacoma if they were on the 2024 Mariners. Freddie Garcia and Aaron Seeley, probably not. Jamie Moore, definitely not. But yeah, Castillo, Kirby, and Miller and Wu break that rotation. And Gilbert, the only reason why Gilbert doesn't is because Jamie Moyer was just so goddamn fucking good. Bullpen-wise, it's 3-3, man. Sasaki, Rhodes, and Nelly, definitely. But I think when you're looking at middle relief, in long guys, Spire, Stanek, and Sauce definitely make it. Yeah, I mean, when you're looking at closer for closer, man, you can't argue against Kazuhiro Sasaki. As a matter of fact, if the Mariners had Kaz Sasaki anchoring the back end of their bullpen today, I don't think you or I would be complaining a lot, especially considering that this team plays in a lot of one-run games, has a lot of one-run wins. A dude like Sasaki probably would lead the league in saves. That dude was unbelievable. His stuff was off the charts. And I think, it's a lot different because if we actually had Matt Brash available, working, and was in this conversation, I would probably think Matt Brash also is in this conversation as well too. And I would probably, if you're looking like the bummer is that we have to talk about Trent Thornton and Austin Voth, who I think is better than Thornton. But the fact that you don't have Santos, you don't have Brash, this conversation changes next year when they're back. I'll just put it that way. Next week, we're going to get into the starting lineup. We're going to recap the pitching next week because I'm curious to know what the cap has to say about this. I wonder if he's going to agree with me on this. It's going to be interesting. But next week we're going to get into the starting lineups. It's going to be interesting, I think. When you consider that, Julio Rodriguez versus Mike Cameron, that's going to be an interesting one. Dan Wilson versus Cal Raleigh. Polanco versus Booney. So it's going to be interesting, man. And David Bell versus Josh Rojas. That's going to be interesting, man. That's going to be really interesting. And considering that the 2001 team had a deep bench, considering the 2024 team that doesn't really have a deep bench at all, outside of a dude like Dylan Moore. But it's going to be interesting, man. Left fielders, Al Martin versus whoever the fuck we're throwing in left field, whether it be Dom Canzone or Luke Raley. It's going to be interesting, man. Oh, by the way, does Mitch Haniger beat out Ichiro? That's going to be interesting. All right. Well, to recap today, Julio, he had the same type of week, man. Nothing really that jumped out of the page. I'd like to see a little bit more from Julio Rodriguez week to week, but for the last 5 weeks, it seems it's been pretty much the same. Before we go, I want to talk about tonight's game because it is the Mariners at Guardians, which I believe has already started, or it's about to start, one of the two. Brian Wu goes up against Tanner Bibby. For those who don't know, Tanner Bibby throws his four-seam fastball, average about 95. He throws it about 45% of the time, but he's a slider changeup guy. Throws the slider 30% of the time to offset his fastball. Doesn't really, when you look at his baseball savant page, he's pretty much middle of the pack when it comes to ERA plus, XBA, fastball velo sits 62nd percentile, average exit velocity 63rd percentile. Has a pretty low chase percentage, and K percentage is pretty high as well too. So when you look at the game logs this year, he's a type of guy who does give up the long ball a little bit, man. In his last start versus the Reds, he gave up 2. He has a tendency to walk some as well too. So this is going to be a situation where you're facing a guy who doesn't really throw deep into games. He's only had 7 innings, twice this year. He averages anywhere between 5 1/3 and 6. So this is going to be an opportunity for the Mariners, to keep this train rolling. It's obvious that the Mariners have momentum, and it's a situation where it's all about whether or not they're going to be able to score early. If they can jump out early, put a little pressure on the Indians, this is going to end up much like we've seen over the course of the last week. I think the Mariners end up winning tonight, and of course, when you're looking at the schedule for this upcoming week, last week I thought it would be possible that they go 4-2 again. They exceeded my expectations by a win. So this week they finish the series in Cleveland, and then they travel to Miami to face a Marlin team. And this is actually something that has to be discussed, and we're going to get to it right now. That this is what we saw a lot of last year when the Mariners were. And it looked like the Mariners were rolling and they were on a nice little good roll. They go into a team in which everybody just assumes that they're going to sweep or take 2 out of 3. And then they figure out a way to play down to their opponent. And they end up losing 2 out of 3 to a team they had no business losing 2 out of 3. This is what I like to call a trap series. This is one of those series where you lose all your momentum. And this is something that you can't look ahead because they got the Rays after that. And that, the Rays are a very tough team, and the Mariners really don't do well in Tampa Bay. And as we saw last September, coming off that road trip with the Mets and Reds, they ended up in Tampa and absolutely got their asses handed to them. This is kind of a crucial series. That Miami series is pretty big. If they can figure out a way to win tonight, take 2 out of 3 in Cleveland, carry that momentum into Miami. That 3-game set in Tampa is going to be huge. I don't care what anybody says. These are the series that you have, and I understand, man. Tampa Bay, 34-39. They're sitting in last place. I get it. Haven't had that great of a season, but they're also 6.5 games out of the wild card, and it's not unthinkable that this team, who has a lot of talent, can make a move come July and put themselves right back in that conversation. So the one thing you cannot do is lay an egg to the Miami Marlins. That is a series that you absolutely take 2 out of 3, if not sweep. And of course, against Cleveland, you also, Cleveland's also leading the Central, 44 wins. So yeah, I like Seattle tonight, but again, we're gonna find out whether or not this offense can continue its consistency. And overall, though, this looks like a pretty good week for the Mariners to either repeat the 5-1 or at least go 4-2. We'll see. It's going to be tough. Going to Florida has never been good for the Mariners. So next week we're going to finish this conversation about 2020, the 2024 versus 2001. It's going to be interesting to see who I think has the ability to crack that lineup versus those guys who put up absolute monster numbers. So next week, Brian Abker will make his debut as the co-host on the podcast. We're looking forward to that. Until then, go Mariners. You guys have a great week.